morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Ingram Jones, and with me tonight I have Brian Custer. Brian, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for choosing to talk to Baylor TV. So, Brian, for those people who don't know who Brian Custer is, give us an overview. Just a quick overview as to who you are.
I'm the host of Showtime Championship Boxing, which I enjoy, and I also work with Fox. I call college football, college basketball, and also call boxing on FS1 for them as well.
So, tell me, how did you get into the business of sports broadcasting, presenting?
The short story was I went to Hampton University. And I think like a lot of young men, saw myself as a future NBA star, but unfortunately didn't have the height to go along with that. And so once I was at Hampton, I knew that I had to have a backup plan. And I always loved sports. I used to watch the news all the time as a kid. So I kind of knew that eventually I wanted to get into television, majored in broadcast journalism there. And really, as soon as I graduated from college, first thing I did was get into the business, and my first job was in radio, and I worked there for like a couple of years, and then after that, I got my first TV job, and I was 24.
The voice. You've got a very distinguished voice. When did you realize that you had that voice?
I think really as a kid, I think when growing up, especially as a preteen, I always had kind of a deep-sounding voice, and people used to tease me about it. In fact, when I was a young kid, I used to try to mimic Howard Cosell. And it just shows you how different of a kid I was. A lot of times when I was right before junior high school, 6th, 7th grade, on Friday nights, I used to love turning on Nightline, because I thought Ted Koppel had the best voice in the world, and I would just watch Nightline to hear him talk. And so I think at that time is when I realized, one of the blessings I was given was my voice. And as I got older, I tried to make sure that I took care of it and trained it.
One of the questions I've always wanted to ask, and I didn't quite get to ask Michael Buffer, who's in the UK recently, is that voice that you have. I mean, how much of that voice is for television? How much of that voice is interacting on a day-to-day basis? Get up in the morning, asking the wife to make you some breakfast, or to tell the kids to go out to school. Is that same Brian Custer that we see on Showtime the same Brian Custer that would be knocking about with his pals?
Yeah, I would say so. In fact, my wife will always say, especially around the house, why do you talk so loud? Because especially if I get excited, I'm saying something, she'll be like, please, can you bring the volume down? So, usually it's the same guy. I mean, obviously, I can get a little more loose when I'm at home than I can when I'm on the air. But usually it is the same voice, and I'm sure for my wife, she'll probably tell you I hear too much of it. And why don't you just go upstairs and relax a little bit? It's always her thing, because she says you talk too much.
I think I'm told the same thing by my wife too. It must be that thing, I guess, Brian? So there was something I read up about, or I was watching online, was yourself and Evander Holyfield, which kind of touched my heart, about prostate cancer. I was very moved by that.
Yeah.
So talk to us about your story with that situation.
I'm a guy who loves physical fitness. I love staying fit. I've always been like that, even as a kid, and playing in different sports. And so as I got older, I've always, been in shape, stayed in shape. And I really think, I want to say once I turned, I want to say maybe like 28, 27 is when I, regularly went to the doctor every year to go get a physical exam. And that really never stopped. And I want to say when I turned 40, I remember I was at work one day, and we got a work email, and it was talking about prostate cancer, and that it was affecting people of color, and that people of color should get a prostate checkup at the age of 40. And I sat there and I was like, well, I'm 40, should I do this? I said, okay, well, I guess I'll go ahead and do it. I knew my regular physical exam was coming up. So when I went and had my physical exam, I asked the doctor, hey, what's this about prostate cancer and should I get tested for it? And he said, yeah, you should. And I did, and everything went great. Got the results back, and there was no problems. And I think that the next year when I went to have my physical exam, I really put it off. I said, you know what, I got the prostate exam last year. It was uncomfortable. Really didn't like the doctor, sticking his finger up my butt. So I was like, I'm not going to do it this year. I'm going to blow that off. My results were good last year. So I blew it off. The following year, I went and had my regular exam, and I sat there and I thought, man, did I get a prostate exam? No, I didn't do it last year. I did it the year before. I guess I'll do it this year. And when I got the results, they had doubled from the previous year. And my doctor said, listen, man, their numbers high. I think the only way we're going to know if something's really going on there is if we do a biopsy. And I'm sitting there thinking, biopsy, I'm 42. Why? And he said, listen, the number for your prostate is high. So let's just find out what it is. And we did a biopsy, and the next thing I know, he calls me into his office maybe like the day after we got the results, and just basically said, look, there's no easy way to tell you this. You got cancer, it's aggressive. If you don't have surgery immediately, you'll probably be dead within a year. And man, I tell you, that was I hope no one ever has to go through that. It was just, I could have fallen off my chair, because I had 3 boys, and that was really the only thing I was thinking about was, am I going to see them, grow up to be teenagers? Will I even see them get married? Will I even see them graduate from high school? And so I did. I had surgery, I want to say, within a month after getting the results back. And then, thank goodness, since that day, it's been a couple of years since then. I've been cancer free, but I do have checkups now every 3 months. I have to go to my doctor every 3 months. I have blood work done. They check my numbers, but it's a fight. I mean, sometimes my numbers go up, sometimes they go down. If they get to a certain point, I may have to do some radiation. But it's a fight. It's a fight every day. And I tell men of color, whether you're black, whether you're Latino, make sure you get a PSA test at the age of 40. It's only a blood test, and listen, it can save your life. It saved mine.
Wow, fantastic stuff there. How did that change your mindset? Before that time, there's almost that feeling of invincibility, immortality, and then an incident like that happens, that shatters your whole foundations. How did you move on from that point afterwards, and what were you like beforehand?
Well, I think like most guys, invincible, and took a lot of things for granted, which is something I don't do anymore. I can tell you that I remember right after surgery, for a while I was, in the bed, and really couldn't do too much. Eventually, I was given the green light where I could take walks in my neighborhood and things of that nature. And I remember the first time I walked out of my house after surgery, and I walked the neighborhood. It was in August. It was really hot, and I remember my wife saying, "Oh my God, it is so hot out here." And the only thing I thought about was, "Wow, that sun feels good on my skin." And I had never had that feeling before in my life. Wow. And those type of things is what you cherish. I cherish like every day, every second. It could be times where I could be in the back in the pool with my kids, and I'll just look up and I'll say, "Man, that sky looks beautiful." And those are things I never ever recognized before that I do now. I see a lot of God's beauty in everything, and I didn't recognize that stuff beforehand. So that's how I've changed a lot. I don't take anything for granted anymore. I don't take this opportunity of meeting you and this opportunity of speaking to you and the people that you reach. Take that for granted. And before, maybe I did. I would have been like, okay, this is just another interview I'm going to do. Let me get this over with. But now, listen, I'm thankful that you wanted to reach out and talk to me. And those are the things I think that how my life has changed. I am really grateful for every day that I'm given because, it's so funny. I just had my doctor checkup just a couple of weeks ago, and my doc and I were talking, and he said, your numbers went up a little bit. We're going to monitor it. We're going to make sure everything is good. And he said, you have that feeling like, man, this disease, I tell you, it's a fight every day. Just when you think you got it conquered, there's always a little something that happens. But he said, and he told me this, he said, but do you realize, had you not gotten checked, you wouldn't be here right now? He said, so why don't you take solace in that, keep your mind right, and continue on with the fight. And I had to really retrain myself and say, you're right. Had I not even gotten checked, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you. So those are the things that I really cherish now that maybe I didn't in the past.
I thought it was very important to touch on this or to talk about this. It kind of builds a different story about Brian Custer. It's you. And where it'd be nice to sit down and kick it back and talk boxing or talk football, I think these things are such character building for people involved like myself who look to people like yourself who are doing and leading the way, Showtime Boxing, for example. And I can sit back, and I'm sure a lot of people who watch Bayloric TV and say, hey, that Brian Custer, they've got a newfound respect for him.
Well, I hope so. I mean, and listen, I know when we go out to different cities and I get to meet people and they want to shake your hand or talk to you and they say, no, I appreciate you, and I always tell them, no, I appreciate you for watching, and I mean that. I think maybe, once you're in this business for a long time, that's just what you say. Hey, thanks, man, I appreciate it. But no, because of going through what I've gone through, I really mean it when I say it now. And maybe I didn't before, but just took it for granted, I think. But now it's such a different story that, again, I don't take anything for granted because, I realize that, you never know. I could be gone tomorrow. I could be gone a year or two from now. So that's why I want to make sure that I cherish really every day.
Well, we appreciate you. And we're saying that now. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Let us talk about you joining Showtime Boxing, because a lot of our fans are boxing fans. So how did you make that trip from where you were to Showtime Boxing?
Well, it was interesting. I was working at a network in New York City called SNY. It's a regional sports network, and it is like half of the network's owned by the New York Mets. And so I did a lot of Jets programming. The New York Jets also have a contract with them. So I hosted a lot of their shows, and I worked there basically every day. And, they have a program on SNY. It's called Broadway Boxing. And Lou DiBella, it was his television series that he had on there. And I remember when I first came to SNY, and when we started in 2006, Lou DiBella put Broadway Boxing on SNY. I want to say it was maybe 2007. And I saw it, and I was like, wow, there's a boxing series on our network, but these guys who are calling these fights don't work for SNY. So I went to our vice president, and I asked him, hey, I want to call those fights. I love boxing. And he said, okay, well, I'll set you up with an appointment with Lou. Lou DiBella basically pays us to run Broadway Boxing. I met Lou, and he said, look, I'm a fan of yours. I've seen you on the air. If you want to call the fights, go right ahead. Because at the time, Nick Charles was calling the fights for Lou DiBella, and he passed away of cancer. And so it just so turned out that they needed a new play-by-play guy. And so he gave me the job. I started calling the fights, and I was doing them, and SNY wasn't paying me any extra money to do them. They just felt like, hey, it's under your contract. You got to do it. And I think I did those for, golly, I want to say, it started in 2008. So it had to be around, I want to say 2010 is when my boss at Showtime called me originally and said, hey, I've been watching Broadway Boxing. I think you do a great job at calling those fights. I'd like you to come work at Showtime. And unfortunately, at the time, I was still under contract with SNY, and SNY is really exclusive. They don't want you doing anything else. And I had to tell them no, I couldn't do it because I still had basically 2 more years left on my contract at SNY. And I'll be honest with you, when I got diagnosed with prostate cancer, it was in August of 2012, and my contract was coming up at SNY in December. It was up. And I remember laying there, and at the time, my boss, my current boss in Showtime, he always stayed in contact with me. Even though I had told him no a couple of years back, he always called and said, hey, I'm a fan of yours. Whenever you want to make that transition and come over, the door's open. And if we have an opening, you're good. And so when I got diagnosed with prostate cancer, they called and checked on me, wanted to make sure I was okay. And I remember laying in the hospital bed, and this goes to one of those things you said, what happens to you when you go through something like this. I said, I'm content at SNY, but I'm not happy. I think what will really make me happy is if I follow my passion, and that would be calling boxing on the national stage as opposed to just doing it regionally and being exclusive at SNY. So, I think I'm going to, at the end of the year, I'm not going to re-sign with SNY, and I'm going to step out on faith and just work for Showtime. And that's it. And just call boxing, give up the benefits, the money and all that stuff. And I told my wife, I said, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die happy. And I want to do what I want to do. And what I really want to do is call boxing on the national stage. And, luckily my wife worked full time, so she had medical benefits and things of that nature. And that's what I did. I told my boss at SNY, I said, listen, I appreciate you guys want to re-sign me again. I'm feeling healthy again, but, I'm not going to re-sign. And, I remember my boss looked at me and he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, Showtime wants to hire me, and I want to work at Showtime calling fights. And my boss at the time at SNY looked at me and said, Brian, boxing is dead. If you don't re-sign with us and go off and just do boxing, you're going to kill your career. And, I'm one of those guys, it only takes a little bit to motivate me. And I really took offense to it. Maybe he was, telling the truth in his own mind, or maybe he was being vindictive. But I just felt like if you really cared about me, you could have said, hey, look, I think your future's better being here. I know you like boxing. I don't know if boxing is going to be good for you. I just think you should be here. But the way he worded it, that's exactly how he said, you're going to kill your career. Boxing's dead. I was like, okay, that's all the motivation I need, because obviously you don't know me very well, and I'm going to do this to the best of my ability. And I remember I ended up calling my current boss at Showtime, and I said, listen, if you want me, if you'll have me, and there's an opening, I would love to be there. And they wanted to bring me in at the time as the host, and they had just hired Brian Kinney at the time. And so he said, well, listen, we hired him because you were on contract last year. So he said, what I can do is I can bring you in and you can call the undercards for us. And, because that's really the only thing I can do for you. He said, but the one thing I want you to know is that I want you, because you're so talented, you're a multi-tool player. He goes, I got guys who are great single hitters. They're great at what they do. I have Hall of Famer Al Bernstein, who's a great analyst. He's not a host. I've got Mauro Ronaldo, who is phenomenal play-by-play guy. Maybe, he can host, but that's not his forte. He said, the one thing I like about you and I love about you is you can host and you can call fights. So you give us a dimension that we don't have. And he said, so if you'll just believe in me and come in and do these undercard fights for me, you never know what's going to happen. And I said, absolutely. This is what I wanted to do. And if you were my first year at Showtime, that's all I did. I just called the Showtime Extreme fights. I hosted, we would do press, when we would do the weigh-in shows, I would host those. And I did that for a good year. Me and Steve Farhood worked together. And the crazy thing was Steve Farhood and I worked together on Broadway boxing.
Wow.
He's an original on Broadway boxing. So when the series first started, like I think 11 years ago, Steve was the first guy Lou had hired. So I had known Steve for years, and he was even trying to get me to come on Showtime, and it just never worked out. So I was calling Showtime Extreme Fights with Steve. I did that for a year, and then just, God smiled upon me, because after that first year, Brian Kenny ended up leaving, and then, my boss made me the host of Showtime Championship Boxing.
Wow, and now you are the host of Showtime Championship Boxing. What's it like? Big fight time. The music's playing, and you're on.
Oh, man.
What's that? I mean, for me, sitting there watching it from in Europe, I'm hyped. And then bang, switch to you, it's big fight time. So I tell the wife, get out of the room. It's fight time, that's it. No telephone calls, nothing. There could be bombs going, I don't care. It's fight time. Doesn't matter.
Well, I tell people this all the time, man. And listen, I've got a number of friends who always they would say the same thing, like, boxing? You doing boxing? And I'd be like, absolutely, I love it. Now I would always tell them there's nothing like a championship fight. And being there, the atmosphere is nothing like. And now that I've been working at Showtime, I get them tickets to the fight, and they love it. They're like fight fanatics now. And that's all they want. Hey, when's the next championship fight? I want to come to a championship. I want to come to the Prostrate Center. Or I want to go to Vegas. Or, and they love it, and the atmosphere, like you said, the music. And for me, hearing our guy Jimmy Lennon, when he goes, it's showtime, and the lights go on and off, the crowd goes crazy. There is no scene like it. And I do this all the time. Right before we go on, and my boss, he always laughs now when I do it. Right before we go on, I always say like a quick prayer. Hey, I hope we have a great show. And then I just look around the entire arena, and I say to myself, I cannot believe I'm sitting here at the MGM Grand. There's 15,000 people in here, and we're about to go on before the world. You know what? God is good, and this is a great life. I do it wherever we go. And, sometimes you have to just take stock in that, because, again, you can take things for granted. But, man, I tell you, when we are at the StubHub Center or at the Barclays Center or at the MGM Grand, you look around, you see this crowd going crazy, that atmosphere. Oh, I absolutely love it. It is so exciting.
Have there been any fights you've called in your time so far, and you've gone, you're listening to the people, the other people that are there, the experts, and they're saying these things, and you're going, I totally don't agree with what you're talking about. You're talking absolute garbage. I don't agree with you. And you've said it, you've got to remain professional. Have you had those moments?
I can't really recall a fight where I thought maybe one of the analysts I was working with was totally off the wall with his assessment of what was going on. I've been there's been a number of fights I think we've done where we both or all three of us have seen the fight go one way, and then the judges come up with something totally different. We're looking like, you've got to be kidding me. And you can't really come out and say, what the hell is that judge thinking about? But you can say it in kind of words like, I don't agree with that, that judgment. I really thought this person did a lot more to win the fight. But I've been in a number of those, and that's the tragic, I think, part of the sport, when it's clear that one person did a lot more, was a lot more active, and maybe because the other person was the A-side guy, they ended up giving the judgment to the other fighter.
Okay, let's talk a bit about the setup. Your day, a day in the life of Brian Custer, in the sense like it's HBO, not HBO, a Showtime.
Mm-hmm.
It's Porter versus Thurman. There's a fight. Talk to us about the setup from, like, you get up in the morning, from that point onwards to that night. What do you have to go through before presenting that night?
Wow. If you bear with me for 1 second, I can show you something really quick. Hold on, 1 second. Just 1 second. So, now I'm old school. A lot of people do it by computer, but this is my archive here of background fighter stuff. So it's alphabetized, A, B, C, D. So usually for a Showtime fight, we get a whole lot of background information on the fighter. And these are fighter notes that we get.
Wow.
And so, usually we get these, I want to say at least a couple of weeks before the fight.
Yeah.
And so you can see I got mine highlighted, I got different notes on here. And what happens is I'll highlight what I think is important in here. And what happens is I'll read all this stuff over. I'll scan the internet on anything I can about these fighters. And then the night, generally before the fight, we have what's called fighter meetings, and we meet with the fighter. And so, from my fighter notes, those are usually kind of the questions we ask. Hey, I heard that you changed trainers in this time, and what did that trainer give you? And so then we have different notes. They tell us, sometimes they give us secrets on what they tend to do that next day. So I put that we write some of that stuff down. And then for me, I have to really go back to my room. Well, we have a production meeting. We talk about what we think are the storylines for the fight. And then I come up with questions for Paulie Malignaggi, for Al Bernstein, for Mauro Ranallo. We all discuss what we want to discuss and the questions that I'm going to throw. Because I never want to kind of, surprise them with anything that's really off the wall. I want to make sure that, I'm asking something that is pertinent to the fight and pertinent to what they want to give out. And that night I'm in my room and writing, because I have to write my own copy of what I have to say, and it's tedious. It's a lot of stuff. So usually the night before the fight, I'm in my room. Usually when we're done with our meetings at about 5 o'clock, and I'm in my room usually till bedtime, midnight or so, just writing the script.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot because now I will say this: our boss at Showtime is a perfectionist, and I love it that way because I have to get it. I have to, once I'm done, I have to forward it to Steve Barhood. He's like our historian. He fact checks everything to make sure that my facts are correct. And then our boss looks over everything for fact checking the grammar and everything, and he looks over everything, and he may say, hey, I don't like the way that sounds, the way you wrote that. Can you change it a little bit? Send it back to me, and then I'll change it again. Send it back to him, and he'll say, I like it. Now, can you just change this one part here? Send it back to me, and then I'll send it back to him. And once he gives the okay, then we're good to go. And then we have a rehearsal, usually before the fight. We usually rehearse for about an hour. We go through the entire show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would never have known that. I thought it was just You're giving us Showtime secrets today.
I know. But you know what? It is. He likes it. The one thing I think Showtime loves is that they want to give you a full show. We have a lot of talented people who put these different features on those fighters together. So we make sure that the show is really big, it's really grand, and again, there's a lot of work that goes into presenting it. And when you watch it, you're like, wow, that was a great fight, that looks seamless. But there's a lot of work that goes into it, and we all have to do our part. And just as I'm in my room writing the script for the show, Mauro is usually in his room. And he goes over notes tediously over everything, so he knows everything about the fighters. Al's another guy, too. He watches a lot of videotape, so he's always watching old videotape of the fighters of their last couple of fights. And he wants to make sure that, he watches some of their tendencies to see if those happen in the fight that's getting ready to happen. And then Paulie's just a fighter nut. I mean, he just... Everything for him is like right here. So, he's doing his homework. So, yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Wow. I want to talk a bit about America's climate at the moment. A lot of stuff going on politically. But, of course, one of the things that we see a lot in Europe is a lot of the killings. A lot of men of colour being shot, a lot of women of colour being killed. How does that affect Brian Custer and his day-to-day working life? And how do you deal with it in your day-to-day life?
Well, I'm happy you asked me that because, listen, it's hard to me because I'm a black male, and I have 3 boys, and I try to tell these guys all the time to be proud of who they are, what they are, and also to be cognizant of how they behave. And I tell them that all the time that, you may not be the best student in the world, but the one thing I'm more concerned about is your behavior in school, because, sometimes you're gonna have a teacher that has these preconceived notions about you because of your color. And, listen, as you see, I don't know if you have a family, but, my boys are growing up totally different than I did. So, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in the inner city of Columbus, Ohio. Unfortunately, my natural father passed away like 4 months before I was born in a car accident. So, for the first basically 10 years of my life, it was just me and my mother and my brother. And, so we grew up differently, grew up a little harder. And as opposed to where this climate where my sons are, I think they take a lot of things for granted. And I had to tell them that, hey, there were times where, a police officer pulled me over just because I was black. And, you guys have to be cognizant of that. And, now that these things are happening, I think now it's starting to register with these guys. Even though my kids are 6, 12, and 13, I think they're starting to see that and starting to comprehend that. And I want them to know that, listen, there are some good police officers, but there are also some police officers out there who are just as racist as other folk. And you got to know how to deal with that and know how to behave and not give them any reason to shoot you or do something to you. So this issue of what we have going on is something that we've been dealing with a lot. And the only difference is now that we're in this world of social media, and it's being captured on cell phones and videotape, as opposed to us just saying it, people saying, yeah, right, yeah, I hear you. Now they can see it. And still there are some people out here, even though they see it, still don't want to believe it. So, but it's one of those things that, it really hits home with me, because I've got 3 boys, and I think about that all the time. Whenever they go out, I'm sitting here thinking, boy, I just hope, everything's okay.
I mean, you could be, and I know a lot of men of colour that will overlook it. It's not my kids, it's not family, it's not me, doesn't affect me, not in my neighbourhood, not a problem. I've got a good job, I've got a good family. Why are you reacting, or why are you responding the way that you are, so concerned about this matter?
Well, because, I think, listen, I always tell people this, you're a product of your environment. So if this is something that has happened to you, I remember when when my mother got remarried and I was at the age of 8. So I was 10 at the time, and we moved to this suburb in Ohio. And I never forget, we were coming home. We were the only black family in that area. And I'll tell you, it was a town called Sylvania, Ohio. And we came home, and this police officer pulled me, my stepfather, and my brother over. And he was so proud because he had just bought a Cadillac at the time. This is the 70s. And he had just bought him a new Cadillac. And we got pulled over in the neighborhood. And I'll never forget it. The officer came out and said, asked my father at the time, do you know why he's pulling over? And he said, no, why? And he said there was a report of a break-in in the neighborhood, and 3 black males were the suspects. And I never forget, my stepfather went off. He said, and so there were descriptions of 3 black males. He said, I'm sitting in the car with a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. What are you talking about? And he cussed that officer out, and I never forget that as long as I'm black. And that was really my first interaction with something like that. And it always stuck with me. These guys would pull up, and trust me, it was only because we were the only black family in that neighborhood. And those cops probably had never seen, like, what are these black folk doing in this Cadillac in this neighborhood, and pulled us over for that. So I think, again, when you're a product, when you've been a product of your environment, and those things happen to you, obviously those things are going to stick with you. And, that's one of the reasons why, I know we're not talking politics here, Donald Trump really irritates me, especially when he always says, my blacks, and my blacks are this, and my blacks are living in hell, and my blacks are, well, listen, last time I checked, I didn't get shot today, and I don't live in hell, Donald Trump. So not all black folk are living that way. So, that upsets me. And, we just moved into a nice suburb here in New Jersey, right outside New York City. And if you look at it, they just went to they fired or got rid of their police chief here because, and it made the news here in New York, he had sent out a memo to his officers to say, if you see any black folk driving around in our suburb, pull them over. Because in his opinion, when we have break-ins in our nice neighborhood here, it's because of these black folk who he said were coming from different areas of New Jersey into our beautiful neighborhood committing robberies. So let's pull them over. And he sent an email out to his officers. Someone leaked it to the news. And this police chief ended up, they didn't fire him. What they did was they had the Justice Department come in and investigate. They said, yes, that was racist. But they demoted him to patrol officer. So he said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit. Got all of his benefits, his severance, so he still got paid, didn't get fired. He just walked away because he had been on the force for 30 or whatever years, still got paid, walked away, and they went up and hired another police chief right here. We just moved here maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and that was the story when we first moved here. So, again, it kills me when people say, oh, maybe some of this is being blown out of proportion. No, this is happening every day, and this is how some people think. And that's one of the reasons why we're having these issues today.
Wow. In your own working life, going through the gears and moving through from career move to career move, and Brian Custer this, Brian Custer that, how are you perceived by those who may not like a man of color being successful?
Yeah, that's funny because one of my coworkers, like at Showtime, Mauro Ronaldo, is a huge social media guy. I mean, he's like social media. And he's always been telling me, be Custer, you gotta get better, you gotta get better. I'm like, okay, I'll try to be more active. But he's a real big time on it. And he may get something like, hey, your calls are over the top, or hey, Mauro, bring it down, the energy down a little bit. But people love, and he's passionate. Mauro is great at what he does. But the difference is, he may get a tweet or someone say, hey, boy, you're a little over the top, what have you. Mine may be different. Mine may say, you black N-word. Why do you talk like that? Or why do you, and it's so, mine immediately goes to racial.
Of course.
It's never about really the job. It's always the race first. And that's one of the things I always try to press upon them when they say, Custer, and I'll show them the tweets, and they'll be like, wow. But that's one of the things that we deal with on a daily basis that they don't have to. People can respond to them even when, let's say, I was just a sports anchor at SNY, or when I was in Dallas, a sports anchor at the CBS affiliate there. People could write my counterparts and say, I don't like the job you did. But people would write me, would start off with, you black, N-word, blah, blah, blah. I don't like you. It always went to race first.
Did you ever hear anybody say along the lines of, I don't know why you got that black guy working for you? Why is that black guy working here? I could do a better job than him.
Or they will say, well, we know you only got the job because of affirmative action.
Oh, yeah, that's that one as well.
That kind of thing. Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, dear me.
Absolutely. And here's the thing that really cracks me up and it really makes me laugh is because, especially when you get, no matter how high in the levels that you go in my business, whether it's working locally, whether it's working nationally or at the network level. I remember when I was trying to do some things at, let's say, CBS, and they said, oh my God, they would tell my agent, we absolutely love Brian. He is great at what he does, and I think he's a really good talent. But I'll be honest with you, we've already got Greg Gumbel and James Brown, and I just don't know where we would put them. And I'm sitting here thinking, so you got two. Oh, you can't have three. I mean, it always comes like
too much color.
Yeah, you look at Jim Nance and Bob Costas, and they hire all these guys who are white, but they never say, well, listen, we already got Jim Nance, Kevin Harlan, Bob Costas. You just go on and on and on. They don't say that. But at one network, if you got one or two, first thing they say is, well, we already got Greg and we've already got Jim. I don't know if we have another role for, and that's what kills me. And that's the other, they don't understand that because they never had to deal with that where we do.
Wow. So how do you hold it together and still be as professional as you are and not lose your cool and just, how do you do it?
Some of it, man, has to do with, age, maturity. I was probably a lot more militant in my 30s than I am now. I keep some of the stuff inside. I've been taking martial arts for like 7 years now. That's helped me a lot deal with things. It keeps you calm, keeps you zen, and it teaches you how to diffuse situations. And for me, instead of just going off, sitting there realizing that it's coming from a person of ignorance, and it's like, why identify ignorance with ignorance? You know what? I'll let that person pass. So I think a lot of it had to do with maturity, some of the training I had. It's not easy because some of it is it's really rough, and you think of like, wow, why am I having always have to jump through these hurdles and hoops where I have counterparts who may have a friend who had a friend knows the vice president or whatever, boom, they're in just like that. And then you got to audition, then you got to audition again, then you got to audition again, then you get the job. You know what I mean? So it just happens like that. And you just have to say, okay. Hopefully, if I get there and I do a great job, then maybe I will open the door for someone else, and their path will be a lot easier than mine was.
So, okay, what would you advise somebody like myself who'd want to move forward and maybe be an interviewer or maybe do exactly what you do? What would you advise to them?
Be passionate. Be passionate about it. And don't give up, man, because it took me a long time. There are a lot of guys who are a lot younger, maybe got opportunities a long time. I've had that long road. I've been in this business over 20 years now, so it was a long time coming. And I would say, it's not going to be easy, especially if you're a person of color. It won't be easy because the one thing I always hear, it's so funny, I'll talk to people all the time, especially decision makers, and they'll say, Brian, it's so refreshing, because I try to find good talent of color, but there are not many people who are just as well spoken as you are. They use that kind of language. But I would say stick with it. And, especially now in this new age of social media where you have YouTube channels and all this other kind of stuff, there's an easier route for you guys to get discovered now than for us. Before, us, it was always, we needed a tape, we had to send it out, they had to make a decision, they said, no, do our tape on the pile, and you just had to keep grinding. Now, in this world of social media, you guys can have an interview with somebody or something, they may look and say, whoa, this guy had an meeting, so he's got good connections. Let me hire him on. So I would say keep plugging, be passionate about it. Don't take no for an answer. And if you really want to do it, go at it 100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Final question. In terms of companies, media outlets that you would recommend for people of color to go to, that you would say, you know what, they're good. They would be people I can recommend, or they've treated me good, or what would you say in your opinion?
So I'll have to go with I'm only going to speak on things that I know about, that I've been in there. Probably at the top is, for me right now, Showtime. And that's, I'll be honest with you, my immediate boss is black. So, that was great. I mean, when you had a person who looks like you, who kind of knows your experience, who calls you out of the blue and says, I want to hire you, man. I love what you're doing. Man, that means a lot to you, because, and he said that from the jump. Like, hey, I've been a big fan of yours, and I want to hire you because you look at the sport. There's a lot of people, whether it's black, Latino in this sport, and there's not many people of color who are calling these fights and are passionate about it. And you are, and we need that. And I respect that. And then more importantly, whenever, I think that's probably why our relationship at Showtime is really good, and I think it plays out on the air, because I genuinely care for my coworkers, whether it's Paulie, whether it's Moral, whether it's Al. When we get together, it's almost like family. It's like, man, where have you guys been? I haven't seen you in 2-3 months. How's the family? How's the wife? How's this and that? I'm in my office right now, and in my office, I got my framed picture of my guys. It's right here on the desk. So, we are. We're all like, whether it's gym break, we're all like family. We catch up with each other. And our boss always says that. Wherever we are, give me one night. And we always do a dinner. And all of us get together, and we all have dinner, and we just talk about family stuff. Like, what's everybody doing? And I love that, because that bond is real. So when you see us on air laughing and joking, I mean, that's real. That's really how we are. We truly enjoy being with each other. So I think Showtime is really good. I've just really started working a lot with Fox now, calling college basketball, calling some college football, calling college football game year coming up. So I like Fox. I mean, it's a lot more loose. And those guys are good too. I mean, we're on the road. They like to get together. And I think Fox has been really okay. Fox Sports, I should say, not Fox News. There's a difference. Let me make that distinction. It's two separate. Fox Sports would probably be right up there. CBS is more conservative.
My wife used to work for CBS affiliate.
What was that?
She used to work for CBS affiliate.
Yeah, because CBS owns Showtime. They're more conservative. Listen. It wasn't like I was very happy when they said, well, we have Greg Gumbel, we have James Brown. I don't know where we could.
We have enough color.
Yes, I don't know where we could fit Ryan. It's like we got 2. I don't know if we're stretching it if we had 3.
Right.
So they're just more conservative. But I think you will know if you get hired by somebody and they put you in one of the main spots. That's when you know this is a company about your talent, not about your color.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Custer, thank you so much for talking to Baylor TV. Enlightening, fantastic, refreshing, as I always believed you would be. And I'm sure that our fans and our followers are going to love you even more for it.
Oh, Doc, man, this is great, Ingram, man. I really appreciate it, Doc. Listen, I've been trying to get over to Europe really bad. I've been telling our boss, we need to go to England, and we need to travel more. So we've been trying to talk them into it, but, they've been doing this feed thing. So, like, when Anthony Joshua and those guys fight, we take the feed in, and we kind of front it from New York. But we're hoping that, especially in 2017, we can venture out overseas
Tell
there.
you what you do, get into Paulie Malignaggi's suitcase.
Yes.
Have a word with Paulie. Have a word.
Oh, you're right. Paulie's in there all the time. He's got that good connect with Sky Sport now, so he's over there all the time. Bless his heart. And you might be right about that. I may just have to throw with Paulie. I might have to throw with him.
Love him. Again, Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Continued success to you, man. All right.